The transport shuttle descended through the purple clouds of Terminus 7, and Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her face against the viewport like a child visiting a theme park. Below, the massive archive station rotated slowly, its silver rings catching the light of 3 distant suns. "First time at the archives?" asked the pilot, a furry creature with too many eyes. "Yes," Sarah said, unable to hide her smile. "I've dreamed about this place since I was 12. The station was legendary. Every species in the galaxy sent their greatest mysteries here. Ancient weapons, strange artifacts, pieces of dead civilizations all stored and studied by the galaxy's brightest minds. And Sarah, a 32-year-old human from Earth, had somehow earned a spot on the research team. The docking process took 20 minutes. When Sarah finally stepped into the station's main corridor, she gasped. The walls were transparent, showing the swirling colors of the gas giant below. Aliens of every imaginable shape moved past her, some walking, some floating, some slithering. A few stopped to stare at her. Humans were still relatively new to galactic society. Only 50 years since first contact. "Dr. Chen," a voice called from above. Sarah looked up to see 6 arms waving at her. The owner descended on a gravity platform, a Kelvathi, one of the archive's senior scholars. Their elongated head held 4 eyes, each one examining Sarah with obvious interest. "I am Prescription of Wisdom," the Kelvathi said in perfect English. "I will be your supervisor during your time here. Thank you for accepting my application," Sarah said, trying not to stare at the way Prescription of Wisdom's arms moved independently, each one performing a different task. 2 were holding data tablets, one was gesturing, another scratching notes, and the remaining 2 hung relaxed at their sides. "Your credentials were impressive," and Prescription of Wisdom leaned closer, lowering their voice. "I have always been curious about humans. Your species is quite unique." They spent the next hour touring the facility. Sarah saw weapons that could crack planets, crystals that sang in frequencies that made her bones vibrate, and a perfectly preserved alien skeleton that stood 30 feet tall. But what she really wanted to see was the reason she'd applied to the archives in the first place. "The throne of Ethron," she said finally. "When can I see it?" Prescription of Wisdom's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Ah, yes. You mentioned it in your application 17 times. I counted." They gestured with 3 arms simultaneously. "Follow me." They took an elevator down, deeper into the station. The walls here were thicker, the lighting dimmer. This was where they kept the most important artifacts, the ones that were potentially dangerous or simply too valuable to display. "The throne was discovered 12,000 years ago," Prescription of Wisdom explained as they walked, "on a dead world called Ethron Prime. The civilization there had been extinct for at least 50,000 years. Nothing remained but ruins and the throne. And nobody knows what it does?" Sarah asked. "Nobody knows if it does anything," Prescription of Wisdom corrected. 47 different species have examined it. We have scanned it with every type of sensor imaginable. We have exposed it to every form of energy. We have placed it in vacuum, in water, in plasma. Nothing. No response. Most scholars believe it is simply a ceremonial object, a fancy chair for a long-dead king. They stopped before a large door made of some dark metal. Prescription of Wisdom pressed 2 hands against it, and it slid open silently. The chamber beyond was circular and vast. And in the center, bathed in soft white light, sat the throne. Sarah forgot to breathe. It was beautiful. The throne stood about 8 feet tall, made of a crystalline material that seemed to shift colors as she looked at it. Blue became purple, became green, became gold. The seat itself was surprisingly simple, almost human-sized, but the back rose in a complex pattern of interconnected geometric shapes that hurt to look at directly. "It's incredible," Sarah whispered. "It is old," Prescription of Wisdom said. "That is certain. Beyond that." They shrugged with 4 arms. "It is a mystery, and mysteries, after 12,000 years of study, become rather boring." Sarah walked closer. The throne seemed to pulse with inner light, but she knew from the research papers she'd read that this was just the way the crystal naturally refracted light. There was no power source. No energy signature. Nothing. May I? Sarah hesitated. May I touch it? Of course. Everyone does, eventually. It is perfectly safe. I have personally touched it 137 times. Prescription of Wisdom waved a dismissive arm. I will prepare your workstation. Take your time. The Kelvathi left, and Sarah was alone with the throne. She approached slowly, pulling out her portable scanner. Might as well do this properly. She documented the throne from every angle, took detailed measurements, and recorded every observation in her tablet. The crystal was cool to the scanner's sensors, exactly room temperature. No variation anywhere on its surface. Finally, she reached out with her bare hand. The moment her fingers touched the crystal, the universe exploded. Light erupted from the throne, so bright that Sarah screamed and tried to pull away. But she couldn't move. Her hand was locked to the crystal surface, and energy was pouring through her, into her, filling every cell in her body with fire and ice, and something else. Something vast and ancient, and utterly alien. Symbols flooded her vision. Not words, not exactly, but concepts that carved themselves directly into her mind. She saw stars being born and dying. She saw civilizations rising and falling like waves on an ocean. She saw beings made of pure energy, dancing between dimensions. And she saw the throne, not this throne, but 12 thrones, scattered across the galaxy like seeds. A voice spoke, but not in her ears, in her soul. Acknowledged. Criteria matched. Activation sequence initiated. Then Sarah was flying backward, or falling, or being torn apart and reassembled. She hit the floor hard, the impact driving the air from her lungs. The light from the throne blazed so bright it should have blinded her, but somehow she could still see. The geometric patterns on the throne's back were moving now, rotating and shifting and rearranging themselves into new configurations. Alarms began screaming throughout the station. Sarah tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't work. The symbols were still flashing behind her eyes, burning themselves into her memory. She could feel them, even now, a presence in the back of her mind that hadn't been there before. The door burst open. Prescription of Wisdom rushed in, followed by a dozen security guards in heavy armor. What did you do? Prescription of Wisdom shouted, all 6 arms waving frantically. What did you? They stopped, staring at the throne. The light was fading now, dimming back to its normal soft glow. But something was different. The patterns on the throne's back had changed, and deep within the crystal, something was pulsing, a heartbeat made of light. It's active, one of the guards whispered. After 12,000 years, it's active. Sarah tried to speak, but all that came out was a cough. Prescription of Wisdom rushed to her side, helping her sit up. The medical bay, quickly, the Kelvathi ordered. As they carried her from the chamber, Sarah looked back at the throne. It was still pulsing, that steady rhythm, like a living heart. And somewhere, in a part of her mind that was no longer entirely human, she understood. The throne had been waiting for thousands of years, waiting for the right species, the right person, waiting for her. In the medical bay, Sarah drifted in and out of consciousness. Doctors of 3 different species examined her, running scanners over her body and muttering in languages she didn't understand. Prescription of Wisdom sat beside her bed, all 6 arms folded in a gesture that Sarah somehow knew meant worry. I'm okay, Sarah managed to say. Her throat felt like she'd been screaming. You are not okay, Prescription of Wisdom said flatly. Your neural patterns have changed. Your brain is exhibiting activity we have never seen in any human. And the throne. They paused. The throne has broadcast a signal. A signal? Across the entire galaxy. We do not know what it says, but we know it is being received. Prescription of Wisdom leaned closer, their 4 eyes reflecting genuine fear. Doctor, Chen, 3 different powers have already responded. 3 ancient civilizations that rarely interact with anyone. They are coming here, to this station, to you. Sarah closed her eyes, and behind her eyelids, she saw the symbols again. Slowly, they were beginning to make sense. They're not coming for me, she whispered. They're coming for what I've unlocked. And what is that? Sarah opened her eyes and met Prescription of Wisdom's gaze. The inheritance. The next morning, Sarah woke to find Prescription of Wisdom sitting in the same chair, though two of their arms were now in medical wraps. She sat up quickly, alarmed. What happened to you? I was attempting to prevent an ascendancy operative from reaching your room, the Kelvathi said calmly. They were not gentle when I refused to move. Sarah's stomach dropped. Someone tried to kill me? Not kill. Abduct. Station security intercepted them on the 3rd level. Prescription of Wisdom gestured with an unwrapped arm. The situation is deteriorating rapidly. 3 ships are now in orbit. The Ascendancy, the Collective Mind, the Preservers. Each demands we turn over the throne. And you. Why me? Because you activated it. Because whatever the throne is, it now recognizes you. Prescription of Wisdom's eyes narrowed. I must tell you something. Something the archives have kept secret for 600 years. They stood and locked the door, then activated a privacy field that made the air shimmer. We knew, Prescription of Wisdom said quietly. Not the specifics, but we knew the throne would activate for a species with certain neural characteristics. We have been monitoring new species for centuries, testing them secretly. When humanity joined the galactic community, we tested you too. Sarah felt betrayal rise in her throat like bile. You knew humans could activate it? We knew it was possible. We did not know it was certain. Prescription of Wisdom's arms writhed in distress. The council made a decision. They suppressed the information. They feared what would happen if humanity knew they could unlock ancient technology. Your species is young, aggressive, unpredictable. They decided it was safer to keep you ignorant. That wasn't their choice to make, Sarah said, her voice cold. No, it was not. Prescription of Wisdom met her gaze. Which is why I am telling you now, and why I will help you, even if it costs me my position, my life. Before Sarah could respond, the privacy field flickered. An alarm began to wail, different from the day before, deeper, more urgent. What's that? Sarah asked. Hull breach. Prescription of Wisdom's eyes went wide. They are boarding us. The door exploded inward. Sarah screamed and dove behind the bed. Through the smoke, armored figures entered sleek suits of black metal that reflected no light. Their helmets were featureless except for a single glowing eye. Dr. Chen, one of them said, their voice processed and hollow. The Ascendancy requires your presence. Come willingly, and your colleagues will not be harmed. Run. Prescription of Wisdom shouted, and hurled themselves at the soldiers. Sarah didn't think. She ran through the broken doorway into the corridor beyond. Behind her, she heard the crackle of energy weapons and Prescription of Wisdom's defiant shout. Then she was sprinting, barefoot in her hospital gown, down corridors she didn't recognize. More alarms were wailing now. Through the transparent walls, she could see explosions blooming in the space around the station. The 3 factions were fighting each other while trying to board. Sarah's mind raced. She needed to get back to the throne chamber. The knowledge the throne had given her was still there, buried in her mind like a seed waiting to sprout. If she could just touch it again, maybe she could understand what to do. She skidded around a corner and nearly collided with a massive insectoid creature in station security armor. Click. Serves order. The station commander. She'd met him briefly during her tour. Dr. Chen. Click serves order said, his mandibles clicking rapidly. Thank the void. Come with me. We are evacuating. No, Sarah said. I need to get to the throne. Impossible. That section is sealed. The Ascendancy controls it. Sarah felt something stir in the back of her mind. The symbols. They were warm now, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. Then unseal it, she said. I cannot. Sarah reached out and touched the wall. She didn't know how she knew to do this, but the knowledge was simply there, as natural as breathing. The symbols in her mind blazed bright, and she felt the station around her really felt it, as if it were an extension of her own body. The wall beneath her hand lit up with the same geometric patterns that covered the throne. They spread outward like frost on a window, racing down the corridor and through the station's systems. Click serves order staggered back. What are you doing? The station is built on Ethron technology, Sarah said, and her voice sounded strange to her own ears. The archives never realized. But I can feel it. I can control it. She closed her eyes and sent her consciousness through the station's network. There, the throne chamber. 4 Ascendancy soldiers guarding it, and the throne itself, calling to her across the distance. Sarah opened the emergency bulkheads throughout that section. The soldiers' shouts of surprise were cut off as they were sealed in separate compartments, isolated from each other and from the throne. "Okay," she said, opening her eyes. "It's clear. Let's go." ClickServe's order stared at her with his compound eyes. "You should not be able to do that. Those systems have encryption that would take centuries to crack." "I'm not cracking anything. I'm asking, and the station is answering." Sarah started running again. "Are you coming or not?" They reached the throne chamber 5 minutes later. The door opened at Sarah's approach, responding to her presence like it recognized an old friend. The throne sat in the center, still pulsing with that steady heartbeat of light. Sarah walked forward and placed both hands on the crystal. This time, she was ready for the surge of information. It flowed into her more gently, images and concepts organizing themselves in her mind. And now, finally, she could understand them. The throne was a key. One of 12, scattered across the galaxy. The Ethron, the civilization that had created them, had been beings of pure energy, existing in dimensions humans couldn't perceive. They had built the thrones as a test and a gift. Whichever species could activate them would inherit the Ethron's knowledge and technology. But there was more. Sarah saw the other 11 thrones, each on a different world. She could feel them, dormant but waiting, and she understood that activating this one throne wasn't enough. To truly claim the inheritance, all 12 had to be awakened, and only she could do it. Sarah pulled her hands away, gasping. The knowledge was overwhelming, pressing against the inside of her skull like it was trying to break free. "What did you see?" ClickServe's order asked. "Everything," Sarah whispered. "And we're in terrible danger." The station shook. Through the transparent walls, Sarah saw a massive ship emerging from the gas giant's clouds, larger than a city, its hull covered in weapons that glowed with gathering energy. "The Collective Mind's flagship," ClickServe's order said, his voice hollow with fear. "They mean to take the throne by force, and they will destroy the station to do it." Sarah looked at the throne, then at her hands. She could still feel the station's systems responding to her will. But that wasn't enough. She needed more power, more understanding. She needed the other thrones. "Commander," she said slowly, "do you have any ships fast enough to outrun all 3 factions?" "Perhaps. The courier ships in Bay 7 are designed for speed. But where would you go?" Sarah pulled up the map in her mind, the one the throne had given her. She could see the locations of the other thrones as clearly as if they'd been tattooed on her brain. "I need to activate the others," she said. "Before the Ascendancy or the Collective Mind. Figure out what they are, before they try to take them." "That is impossible. You would never make it past their blockade." "I have to try." Sarah turned to face him fully. "Because if I don't, they'll tear the galaxy apart fighting over this one. At least if I'm running, they'll chase me. They'll leave the station alone." ClickServe's order's mandibles clicked in thought. Finally, he nodded. "Bay 7. I will have a ship prepared, but you will need a crew. I'll go alone." "You will die alone," ClickServe's order interrupted. "No offense intended, but you are a xenoarchaeologist, not a pilot, not a soldier." The door behind them hissed open. Prescription of Wisdom stumbled in, 2 more arms now damaged and leaking blue blood. Behind them came a young alien Sarah had never seen before, humanoid, but covered in silvery scales, with large eyes that reflected like mirrors. "This is Chiron," Prescription of Wisdom said between gasps for air. "Ascendancy pilot. Claims he wants to defect. I saw what my commanders were willing to do to capture you," Chiron said, his voice soft. "They fired on civilian sections. Killed archive researchers who got in their way. That's not what I signed up for. So," he shrugged, "if you're running, I'm your pilot." Sarah wanted to argue, to tell them she couldn't ask them to risk their lives. But the station shook again, harder this time, and alarms were screaming. "Bay 7, she said. Now, they ran. The courier ship, Driftwalker, was small, barely large enough for 6 people. But it was fast. Sarah felt the engines thrumming through the deck plates as Chiron pushed them to maximum acceleration, fleeing the archive station's destruction. Behind them, the 3 faction fleets were tearing each other apart, and the station was caught in the middle. "They'll kill everyone," Sarah said, watching the explosions through the viewport. "No," Prescription of Wisdom said from the co-pilot's seat, nursing their injured arms. "Click serves order is evacuating. He is a good commander. He will save as many as he can. Besides," Chiron added, his silvery scales reflecting the starlight, "they're not really fighting over the station anymore. They're fighting over which one of them gets to chase us." He was right. Already Sarah could see ships breaking from the fleet formations, turning to pursue. She felt sick. "Where to?" Chiron asked. Sarah closed her eyes and consulted the map burned into her mind. 12 thrones. 11 still waiting. She chose the closest one, the water world. Title 9. It's in the Kepler sector. "That's collective mind territory," Chiron said. "They'll have patrols everywhere. Everywhere they'll expect us, yes," Prescription of Wisdom said thoughtfully. "But Title 9 is a research colony. Small, unimportant. They may not have increased security there yet." "It's our best chance," Sarah said. "The throne is underwater, in ruins. The colonists have been studying for decades. They have no idea what they're guarding." The journey took 3 days. 3 days of constant fear, jumping between star systems, and hiding in asteroid fields when patrol ships passed too close. Sarah spent the time trying to understand the knowledge the throne had given her. It wasn't like learning in the normal way. The information was already there, buried deep, and she had to coax it out piece by piece, like remembering something from early childhood. She learned that the Ethron had transcended physical form 500,000 years ago. They had explored every corner of the galaxy, met every civilization, and found themselves alone in a way that filled them with terrible sadness. So they created the thrones as a way to pass on their legacy, a test to find worthy heirs. But why humans? Sarah wondered. What made her species special? The thrones couldn't give her that answer. Maybe the Ethron themselves hadn't known. Maybe they just scattered the keys and waited to see who would find them. When they arrived at Title 9, Sarah was shocked by the planet's beauty. It was entirely ocean, deep and blue, with archipelagos of floating research platforms connected by bridges. The ruins sat 300 meters down, in the twilight zone where sunlight faded to darkness. "I'm not rated for pressure diving," Chiron said, studying the readings. "We'll need a submersible from the colony. We can't risk contacting them," Prescription of Wisdom said. "Word of what happened at the archives has spread. Every major power is looking for Dr. Chen." "Then we steal one," Sarah said. Both aliens turned to stare at her. She felt her face heat up. "What?" "I'm trying to adapt." They stole a submersible. Actually, steal was too strong a word. Sarah simply walked onto the research platform, used her newfound connection to Ethron technology to override the security systems, and walked out with a small diving craft. The whole thing took 20 minutes. "This is wrong," Prescription of Wisdom muttered as they descended into the dark water. "This is theft. This is against 36 archive regulations." "You can file a complaint when we're done saving the galaxy," Sarah said, only half joking. The ruins appeared below them like ghosts. Massive structures of the same crystalline material as the throne, grown over with coral and anemones. Schools of bioluminescent fish swam through empty windows, creating constellations of light in the darkness. And there, in what must have once been a central plaza, sat the second throne. This one was different from the first. Where the archive's throne had been geometric and precise, this one was organic, flowing. It looked like it had been grown rather than built, with curves and spirals that seemed to move in the dancing light. "Airlock won't work at this depth," Chiron said. "You'll have to use a pressure suit." Sarah put on the suit, her hands shaking. The first throne had nearly overwhelmed her. What would a second one do? Only one way to find out. She cycled through the airlock and swam out into the cold ocean. The pressure suit's lights cut through the darkness as she descended to the plaza. Fish scattered at her approach. Something large and tentacled watched from the shadows but didn't come closer. Sarah touched the throne. The water around her lit up like lightning. Energy cascaded through the ruins, waking technology that had slept for eons. The throne actually sang, a vibration that Sarah felt in her bones and knowledge poured into her mind. This throne taught her about Ethron science, about bending space and time, about drawing energy from the fabric of reality itself, about technologies that seemed like magic because they operated on principles humans hadn't discovered yet. When Sarah pulled away, she was crying inside her helmet. It was too much, too vast. How could one human mind hold all of this? But it wasn't destroying her. Instead, she felt herself expanding to accommodate it. Growing, changing. She swam back to the submersible. Chiron and Prescription of Wisdom were staring at her with expressions she couldn't read. "Your eyes," Prescription of Wisdom said quietly. "Dr. Chen, your eyes are glowing." Sarah looked at her reflection in the submersible's metal hull. It was true. Her eyes shone with a faint golden light, the same color as the throne's energy. "I'm okay," she said. "I think. Let's go. We have 9 more to find." Over the next weeks, they traveled across the galaxy. Each throne presented new challenges. The third throne sat in a space station drifting through a nebula, guarded by automated defenses that nearly killed them before Sarah learned to speak their language. The fourth required them to land on a high-gravity world where every step felt like carrying someone on her back. Sarah had to crawl the last 100 meters to reach it. The fifth was in a city inhabited by peaceful aliens who welcomed them with food and song, never knowing the treasure they sheltered in their temple. With each throne, Sarah changed more. The golden light in her eyes grew brighter. Her hair began to take on a crystalline quality at the tips. She found she needed less sleep, less food. Her thoughts moved faster. Sometimes, she looked at her hands and barely recognized them. Prescription of Wisdom recorded everything, documenting humanity's transformation with scientific precision and barely concealed sorrow. "You're losing yourself," the Kelvathi said one night, after Sarah had activated the 6th throne. "I'm becoming something more," Sarah replied. "Are you? Or is the Ethron legacy erasing you and writing something new?" Sarah had no answer. At the 8th throne, hidden on an ice moon, their luck ran out. The collective mind found them. Sarah was halfway through the activation when they attacked. Energy weapons carved through the ice, and troops in environmental suits swarmed the chamber. Chiron fought with desperate courage, his stolen ascendancy pistol dropping 3 soldiers before they overwhelmed him. Prescription of Wisdom threw themselves between Sarah and the attackers, sacrificing 2 more arms to buy her seconds. Then something hit Sarah from behind, and the world went dark. She woke in a laboratory, white walls, harsh lights, and pain, terrible pain in her head, like something was drilling into her skull. A machine was connected to her brain, pulling out the knowledge the thrones had given her, extracting it like mining ore. "Fascinating," a voice said. A collective mind scientist peered at her with clusters of small eyes. "Your neural structure is adapting in real time. We thought we would need to dissect you to understand the activation pattern, but your brain is reorganizing the data for us. How convenient." Sarah tried to speak, to scream, but nothing came out. The pain increased. Then the wall exploded. Prescription of Wisdom stood in the gap, their remaining arms holding weapons they'd taken from guards. Blue blood streamed from a dozen wounds. "Run!" they shouted. Sarah couldn't run. She couldn't even stand. But somehow, she reached out with her mind, the same way she had on the archive station. She felt the collective mind ship around her, its systems and computers all linked together. And she felt the 8 thrones she'd already activated, scattered across space but still connected to her. She drew on their power. The laboratory's lights exploded. Computer systems across the ship went haywire. Doors opened and closed at random. And Sarah, glowing now with golden fire, stood up. "No more," she said. They escaped in a stolen shuttle. Chiron had somehow freed himself and was waiting at the dock. Together, they fled back to the Driftwalker and jumped to hyperspace before the collective mind could regroup. In the medical bay, Sarah lay still, while Chiron tended to Prescription of Wisdom's wounds. The Kelvathi was down to just 4 functional arms now, and their breathing was labored. Why? Sarah asked. Why do you keep risking everything for me? Prescription of Wisdom's eyes met hers, and despite the pain, the alien smiled. Because you are the story of the age, they said, and someone must record it properly. Someone who was there. They coughed, blue blood on their lips. Besides, I have grown quite fond of you humans. You are terribly inconvenient, but never boring. Sarah held their hand, all four of them, and cried. When she pulled up the map that night, she saw they were close to the 9th throne, just 3 more. 3 more, and the inheritance would be complete. But as she studied the locations, her blood went cold. The last 3 thrones weren't like the others. They sat in a specific pattern around a region of space known as the Void Cluster. A place no ship ever went. A place that seemed to exist outside normal space. And according to the knowledge burning in her mind, they weren't just keys to inheritance. They were seals. The 9th throne sat on a planet being torn apart. Sarah watched through the viewport as Chiron guided the driftwalker into orbit. The world below was a nightmare of seismic violence. Mountain ranges rose and fell in real time. Oceans boiled into steam and then refroze into ice. The planet was caught between 2 gas giants, and their gravitational forces were kneading it like dough. The throne's readings are coming from that, Prescription of Wisdom said, pointing with one of their remaining arms at a valley that was, for the moment, stable. We have approximately 40 minutes before tectonic shifts make landing impossible. Then we'd better be fast, Sarah said. They landed in a storm of ash and lightning. The ground trembled constantly under Sarah's feet as she ran toward the throne, which sat exposed on bare rock. This one looked wounded, cracks running through its crystal structure, as if the planet's violence had damaged it over the eons. Sarah touched it, and the activation was agonizing. The knowledge that flooded into her was dark, tinged with warning. She saw the Ethron's final days, saw their civilization at its peak, and then she saw what destroyed them. The Devourer. Not a being exactly, more like a law of nature. A cosmic force that fed on civilizations when they reached a certain level of advancement. It had consumed the Ethron just as they achieved their greatest transcendence, drinking in their knowledge and power, and leaving nothing behind but empty ruins. The Ethron had fought it, and they had won, barely, at the cost of their existence. They had imprisoned the Devourer using the throne network, turning it into a cage that spanned the galaxy. The first 9 thrones were keys, yes, but the last 3 were locks. And Sarah had been racing to open them. She pulled away from the throne, gasping, as the ground split open beneath her feet. Chiron dragged her back, and they ran for the ship as the planet tried to shake itself to pieces. In orbit, Sarah told them what she'd learned. So this has all been a trap, Chiron said bitterly. The inheritance was bait. The Devourer wanted us to free it. Not a trap, Sarah said slowly. A test. The Ethron wouldn't have left the thrones if they thought they'd just doom another civilization. They needed a species capable of opening the cage but wise enough not to. And you think humans are wise? Prescription of Wisdom said. Their voice was weak. The injuries from the collective mind ship were getting worse, not better. I think humans are stubborn, Sarah replied. We don't give up. And we don't let others make our choices for us. She pulled up the map again. The 10th throne was near, in a system with a dying star. And all 3 faction fleets were converging on it. They'd finally figured out the pattern. They're going to finish what we started, Chiron said. They're going to open the cage. Not if we get there first. The 10th throne floated in space, on the remnants of a planet that had been consumed by its expanding sun. Massive solar flares licked at the ruins, and radiation levels were lethal. I can shield the ship for 10 minutes, Chiron said. No more. I'll be fast. Sarah suited up and jetted across the gap, her suit's radiation warnings screaming. The throne sat in what had once been a grand hall, now exposed to vacuum and stellar fire. She had to dodge around chunks of debris that were slowly falling into the sun. When she touched this throne, she saw the faces of the Ethron. Not their physical forms, they'd abandoned those long ago, but their essences. Individual minds, each one vast and complex. And she heard their final message. left for whoever would inherit their legacy. We made a mistake. We grew too quickly, reached too high, without understanding the balance of the cosmos. The Devourer is not evil. It is correction. A force that ensures no single civilization grows so large, it threatens the fabric of reality itself. We imprisoned it because we feared death. But in doing so, we may have created something worse. Use our knowledge wisely. Do not repeat our error. And if you can, find a way to restore the balance without releasing the Devourer or keeping it chained forever. That is the true test. Sarah returned to the ship just as all three faction fleets arrived. The space around them lit up with weapons fire. Dozens of ships, all focused on the ruins and the throne. They were firing on each other, but also firing at anything that moved. "We need to run," Chiron shouted. "Not yet." Sarah closed her eyes and reached out, drawing on all 10 activated thrones. Golden light erupted from her body, so bright that Chiron and Prescription of Wisdom had to look away. Sarah felt the faction ships around her, felt their computers and weapons and life support systems, felt the Ethron technology woven into all of them. Every spacefaring species in the galaxy had reverse-engineered ancient ruins, whether they knew it or not. She spoke to that technology, and it listened. Every ship in the system shut down simultaneously. Weapons went offline. Engines died. Life support remained active, but nothing else. The battle simply stopped. "What did you do?" Prescription of Wisdom whispered. "I asked them nicely to take a break," Sarah said. Her voice sounded strange, layered with harmonics that human vocal cords shouldn't have been able to produce. "Now we go." "One more throne. 2 more," Chiron corrected, checking the map. "2 more seals." "1," Sarah said firmly. "Because I'm not opening the last seal." "Then how will you complete the inheritance?" Prescription of Wisdom asked. Sarah met their eyes, her own blazing with golden light. "I'm going to change the test." The 11th throne was in the Void Cluster. Just being near the region made reality feel thin, fragile. Space itself looked wrong here. Colors that shouldn't exist swirling in the darkness. The throne sat on an asteroid that orbited nothing, held in place by forces that defied physics. Getting to it required Chiron to navigate through gravitational anomalies that would have crushed a normal ship. As they approached, Sarah felt the Devourer for the first time. It was aware. It was hungry. And it knew she was coming. "I do not like this," Prescription of Wisdom said. All their translators' languages must have failed them, because they said it in their native tongue, a series of clicks and whistles that somehow conveyed pure dread. Sarah suited up again. But before she could enter the airlock, Chiron stopped her. "I know what you're planning," he said quietly. "You're going to activate it, and then offer yourself as a sacrifice to reseal the Devourer. Aren't you?" Sarah didn't answer. "Don't," Chiron said. "Please. There has to be another way." The Ethron's message said to find balance. Maybe that means someone has to stay and keep the Devourer calm. Someone it can feed on slowly, sustainably, instead of consuming whole civilizations. "That is not balance," Prescription of Wisdom said, suddenly at her elbow. "That is suicide. I'm already barely human anymore," Sarah said, gesturing at her glowing eyes, her crystalline hair. "Maybe this is what I was supposed to become. The bridge between the Devourer and the rest of the galaxy." "No." Chiron's voice was hard. "The test wasn't individual sacrifice. It was cooperation. The Ethron failed because they tried to handle everything alone. Don't make the same mistake." Sarah stared at him. Then at Prescription of Wisdom, who nodded with all 4 of their good arms. "The pilot makes a fair point," the Kelvathi said, "for a defector and a criminal." "Hey," Chiron protested. Despite everything, Sarah smiled. "Okay. So what do we do?" "We activate the 11th throne together," Prescription of Wisdom said. "Multiple species, multiple minds. We show the Devourer that the galaxy has changed, that civilizations can work together now, that maybe we've learned what the Ethron never did." "Will that work?" Sarah asked. "Absolutely not," Prescription of Wisdom said cheerfully. "But it is a better plan than yours." They all suited up. Together, they jetted across to the asteroid and approached the throne. This one was the largest yet, and the most alien. It seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, its edges blurring into spaces that hurt to perceive. "On three," Sarah said. They placed their hands, all of them, human and Kelvathi, and scaled on the throne together. The Devourer's awareness slammed into them like a physical blow. Sarah felt its hunger, its rage at being imprisoned. But she also felt something else. Loneliness. Pain. The Devourer wasn't a monster. It was a tool, created by forces even older than the Ethron, designed to prevent universal entropy by recycling civilizations. But it had been locked away so long it had gone mad. Sarah spoke to it, not with words but with the knowledge the thrones had given her. She showed it the galaxy as it was now. Thousands of species, working together, learning from each other, growing not as individual civilizations racing toward transcendence, but as a community. She showed it humanity's stubbornness, Chiron's courage to abandon his people's cruelty, prescription of wisdom's dedication to truth, even at terrible cost. And she asked the Devourer a question. What if you didn't need to consume entire civilizations? What if you could be part of the balance instead of the end? The Devourer considered this. For a moment that stretched toward eternity, Sarah felt its vast consciousness, weighing options that spanned millennia. Then it answered. The three of them were thrown backward, gasping. The throne blazed with light, not golden like before, but a deep purple that seemed to contain infinity. Did it work? Chiron asked. Sarah felt the change rippling through the galaxy. The first 10 thrones, all pulsing in a new rhythm. And the 11th, no longer a seal, but something else. A gateway. A diplomatic channel. It worked, she whispered. The Devourer agreed. It will remain separate from our dimension, but it will communicate. It will help maintain balance. And in exchange, civilizations that reach a certain level will contribute knowledge willingly. Feed it information instead of being consumed. So we made a deal with a cosmic horror, Chiron said. Great. That's not terrifying at all. Better than being eaten, Prescription of Wisdom pointed out. They returned to the ship and plotted a course away from the void cluster. As they traveled, Sarah felt the 12th throne calling. It remained sealed, a final failsafe. If the Devourer ever broke their agreement, that seal could be activated to imprison it again. But for now, it would remain untouched. Sarah looked at her reflection in the viewport. The golden light in her eyes was fading slightly. She still looked more Ethron than human. But maybe that was okay. Maybe being a bridge between two states of being was exactly what the galaxy needed. Where to now? Chiron asked. Sarah smiled. Earth. I think the galaxy needs to meet humanity properly. And humanity needs to know what we've inherited. The factions will not be pleased, Prescription of Wisdom warned. They wanted the inheritance for themselves. Then they shouldn't have chased us across the galaxy and forced us to solve the problem without them, Sarah said. Besides, I have a feeling the Devourer is about to send them all a message about cooperation. As if in response, every display on the ship lit up with the same symbol, the pattern from the throne network, now visible to every civilization simultaneously. The message was simple. The inheritance is not for one species. It is for all who prove worthy. Work together, or work not at all. Chiron laughed. It started as a chuckle and grew into deep, rolling laughter that was probably tinged with hysteria. We changed galactic civilization. 3 people in a stolen courier ship changed everything. 4 people, Sarah corrected, thinking of ClickServe's order back at the archives and all the researchers who died in the attack. And millions more who did their part by recording, preserving, and studying the past. We just got to do the dramatic bit at the end. Prescription of Wisdom was already recording, their arms moving across multiple data tablets simultaneously, documenting everything. What are you writing? Sarah asked. The truth, the Kelvathi said simply, so that no one can rewrite this story later. So that everyone knows a human activated the thrones, yes, but that it took all of us to solve the real problem. Sarah nodded. That felt right. They set course for Earth, leaving the void cluster behind. Ahead of them, the galaxy was already changing, as species received the Devourer's message and began to understand what had happened. The age of individual civilizations racing toward transcendence was over. The age of cooperation had begun, and humanity, against all odds, had been the catalyst. The journey to Earth took 2 weeks. Sarah spent most of that time sleeping. The 11 throne activations had exhausted her in ways that rest could barely touch. When she looked in the mirror, she saw a stranger eyes still faintly glowing, hair now completely crystalline, skin with a slight shimmer like light reflecting off water. "You are still you," Prescription of Wisdom said, finding her staring at her reflection one morning. "Where it matters. In here." They tapped her chest with one hand. "I have been observing humans for 50 years. You are still recognizably Sarah Chen. I don't feel like Sarah Chen anymore." "Good." Sarah Chen was a xenoarchaeologist with dreams too big for her station. "You are now Sarah Chen who changed the galaxy. It would be concerning if you felt the same." Despite herself, Sarah laughed. "How are your arms?" Prescription of Wisdom flexed the 4 that remained functional. "They will heal. Or they will not. Either way, I have enough to keep writing." They gestured at their ever-present tablets. "I am nearly finished with the primary account. Once we reach Earth, I will need to interview you properly, for the historical record. What will you call it?" "I am considering the Throne Accords, or perhaps the Human Catalyst." Though Chiron suggested how 3 idiots accidentally saved the galaxy, which has a certain charm. This time Sarah's laugh was genuine. It felt good. It felt human. When Earth appeared in the viewport, Sarah cried. She'd been gone less than 2 months, but it felt like a lifetime. The blue-green marble hung in space, completely unaware of what had happened in the greater galaxy. The throne activations, the battles, the deal with the Devourer, none of it had touched Earth directly. Yet, "They are hailing us," Chiron said. "Earth Defense Force. They want to know why a ship with collective mind energy signatures is approaching." "Tell them, Doctor. Sarah Chen requests permission to land. Tell them I need to speak with the Global Council." "That is not going to work. Tell them I activated the Ethron thrones, and I'm carrying a message that concerns every human alive." Silence. Then, "They are conferencing with someone. Multiple someones. This is causing quite a stir." 5 minutes later, they had landing clearance, and an escort of 6 military ships, just in case. They landed at the United Earth Space Center in Australia. Sarah had never been here before she'd left Earth from the smaller facility in California. But she'd seen pictures. The massive complex sprawled across kilometers of red desert, humanity's gateway to the stars. The airlock opened, and Sarah took her first breath of Earth air in months. It smelled like eucalyptus, and dust, and home. A delegation waited on the landing pad. Diplomats in formal suits, military officers in dress uniforms, and scientists in practical clothes. At the front stood Ambassador Marcus West, Earth's primary representative to the Galactic Council. He stared at Sarah, his eyes widening as he took in her altered appearance. "Dr. Chen?" His voice was uncertain. "It's me, Ambassador. I know I look different. We need to talk. Privately. And you'll want to include everyone who makes decisions about humanity's future, because what I'm about to tell you will change everything." They were taken to a secure conference room deep inside the complex. Prescription of Wisdom and Chiron came too, despite protests from security. Sarah insisted. "They saved my life, multiple times. If humanity is going to join the galactic community properly, we need to start by trusting our allies." The conference room filled quickly. The Global Council connected via hologram representatives from every Earth nation, all watching with expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion. Sarah told them everything. She spoke for 2 hours, describing the thrones, the Ethron, the 3 factions' pursuit, and the Devourer. She explained what the inheritance meant and what humanity had accidentally claimed. And she told them about the deal she'd made, the new galactic order that was forming. When she finished, there was silence. Then everyone started talking at once. "You made a deal with a cosmic entity without consulting Earth? We have rights to ancient alien technology? What does this mean for our treaties with other species? Are we in danger?" Ambassador West held up his hands for quiet. "Dr. Chen, I understand you did what you thought was necessary. But you've put Earth in an incredibly complicated position. The other civilizations will see us as either incredibly lucky or incredibly threatening. I know, Sarah said. That's why I came back. Humanity needs to decide who we want to be in this new galaxy. The thrones gave me knowledge and power, but they belong to all of us. I'm not keeping them. More silence. You want to share it? Someone asked. The Ethron inheritance? I want to teach it, Sarah corrected. To humans, yes, but also to anyone who wants to learn. The whole point of the deal with the Devourer was cooperation. If I hoard this knowledge, I become exactly what the Ethron were: isolated and doomed. Prescription of Wisdom leaned forward, all four arms gesturing for attention. If I may speak, I represent the Galactic Archives, and I have been documenting Dr. Chen's journey. What she accomplished was not a human victory or an alien defeat. It was proof that the current galactic order is flawed. The Ascendancy, the collective mind, the Preservers, they all saw the thrones as tools for domination. Only Dr. Chen and her companions saw them as a puzzle to solve together. Pretty words, one of the council members said via hologram. But this puts a target on every human in the galaxy. The target was always there, Chiron said quietly. It was the first time he'd spoken. Do you know why I defected from the Ascendancy? Because they feared you. Humans. They feared your adaptability, your tendency to do the impossible. They talked about you the way my people used to talk about dangerous predators. With respect, yes, but also with plans for culling if you became too numerous. The room went very quiet. And now? Ambassador West asked. Now, Dr. Chen has made humanity impossible to ignore, but she has also made you impossible to simply eliminate. The Devourer's message went to every civilization. They all know a human activated the thrones. They all know you have access to Ethron technology. Chiron's mirror-like eyes reflected the room's lights. You can never go back to being small and unimportant. So you must choose. Hide and be hunted, or step forward and be equals. The debate continued for hours. Sarah listened, occasionally answering questions, but mostly letting humanity's leaders wrestle with the decision. It wasn't hers to make alone. That was the whole point. Finally, as night fell outside, Ambassador West called for a vote. All in favor of accepting Dr. Chen's proposal, sharing the Ethron knowledge, and stepping into a leadership role in galactic cooperation? The vote wasn't unanimous. Some nations worried about the risks, about becoming too visible, but the majority chose to move forward. Then it's settled, West said. Dr. Chen, you'll work with a team of scientists and diplomats to begin the knowledge transfer, and will formally request an emergency session of the Galactic Council to present the new throne accords. Sarah nodded, relief flooding through her. Thank you. I was terrified you'd say no. Are you kidding? Wes smiled for the first time. We're humans. We don't say no. We say, hold my beer and watch this. Laughter rippled through the room, releasing the tension. Over the next weeks, Sarah worked with teams from across Earth, scientists who understood quantum physics better than she did, engineers who could turn theoretical Ethron technology into practical applications, diplomats who knew how to navigate galactic politics. She also spent time with her family. Her parents had thought she was dead when the archive station was attacked. Seeing them again, holding her mother while she cried, listening to her father's terrible jokes, it reminded Sarah why she'd fought so hard to come home. You look so different, her mother said, touching Sarah's crystalline hair gently. Does it hurt? No. It's just different. I'm still me, Mom. Just more. As long as you're happy, honey. That's all I've ever wanted. Sarah hugged her tighter. The Galactic Council session was scheduled for 3 months later, giving everyone time to prepare. But 2 weeks before the meeting, something unexpected happened. The Devourer sent another message. It appeared simultaneously on every display across the galaxy, not words, but images and feelings. Sarah felt it in her bones, through her connection to the Throne network. The Devourer was showing the galaxy its true nature. Not a monster, but a gardener. It had been created by forces at the dawn of the universe to prevent civilizations from growing so advanced they destabilized reality itself. The Ethron had nearly broken physics by transcending dimensions. The Devourer had stopped them, painfully, because that was its function, but it was tired. Tired of being hated. Tired of destroying what it was meant to protect. The New Deal gave it another option. It could observe without destroying. It could guide without consuming. And, in exchange, civilizations would voluntarily contribute their knowledge when they reached certain milestones, feeding the Devourer's understanding without being erased. The message ended with an invitation. Any civilization could commune with the Devourer through the Throne Network. It would answer questions about the nature of reality, about technologies and philosophies. Not as a god, but as a very old librarian. The galaxy went quiet, absorbing this. Then, slowly, acceptances began arriving. Species that had fought over the thrones were now requesting access to communicate with the Devourer. The Ascendancy sent a formal apology to Earth. The collective mind released all data from their attempted extraction of Sarah's knowledge, sharing it freely. Even the Preservers, who had wanted to keep everything sealed, acknowledged that this outcome was better than continued imprisonment. Sarah watched it unfold from Earth, amazed. "You did it," Prescription of Wisdom said, watching the news feeds with her. "You changed the fundamental nature of galactic civilization." "We did it," Sarah corrected. "I just happened to be the one who touched the throne first." The Galactic Council session was historic. Representatives from 200 species gathered, and for the first time in recorded history, they unanimously agreed on something: the Throne Accords. The Accords established guidelines for accessing Ethron technology, rules for communicating with the Devourer, and a framework for cooperative advancement. No single species could monopolize the knowledge. No civilization could use it for conquest. And humanity, as the catalyst for this change, would help oversee the transition. Sarah stood before the council and felt the weight of their gazes. She was still mostly human, but the Ethron changes were permanent. She would live longer than normal humans, her mind would work differently, and she would always be connected to the Throne Network. She had become something new, a bridge between human and Ethron, between civilization and the cosmic forces that shaped the universe. "They said no being could rouse the throne," Sarah said, her voice carrying through the chamber. "They were right. It took all of us. And that's the real lesson here. The Ethron failed because they tried to handle everything alone. They became so advanced, so isolated, that when the Devourer came for them, they had no allies. No one to help them find a better solution." She looked around at the assembled species, so different from each other, yet all capable of working together. "We have a chance they didn't have. We have each other. Let's not waste it." The council erupted in the closest thing to applause that 200 different species could manage a cacophony of sounds and gestures that somehow felt unified. Sarah stepped down from the podium and found Prescription of Wisdom waiting. "I finished the book," the Kelvathi said, holding up a data crystal. "The complete historical record, from your arrival at the archives to this moment." "What did you call it?" "They said no being could rouse the throne until a human arrived." It seemed appropriate. Prescription of Wisdoms. 4 eyes sparkled with amusement. "Also, it will sell extremely well. I am donating all profits to rebuilding the archive station." "You're a good friend," Sarah said. "I am a good historian," Prescription of Wisdom corrected. The friendship was an unexpected bonus. Chiron joined them, looking uncomfortable in formal diplomatic clothes. "So what now?" "We're heroes, apparently. There's talk of medals and monuments and other things that sound boring." Sarah laughed. "Now we get to do the hard part. Living up to what we've started." "Great," Chiron muttered. "I was hoping for vacation." They left the council chamber together. 3 people who had accidentally saved the galaxy by refusing to accept that something was impossible. Behind them, civilizations that had been enemies for millennia were shaking hands and tentacles and various other appendages, beginning the slow work of cooperation. Sarah looked back once, at the monument they were already planning to build. A statue of the throne, with 12 figures of different species standing around it, hands joined. It was aspirational. It was hopeful. It was very human. And maybe, Sarah thought, that was exactly what the galaxy needed. A little human stubbornness, a little human hope, a little human refusal to accept that the universe was too big, too old, too complicated for one person to make a difference. She touched the throne network in her mind, felt it humming across the galaxy. Somewhere in the dark, the Devourer was learning to be part of the garden instead of the ending of it. Somewhere in the void, 11 thrones pulsed with patient light, waiting for the next chapter. And somewhere on a blue-green planet that had only just stepped onto the galactic stage, humanity was preparing to show the universe what they did best: the impossible. Together,